السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في البداية اسمحوا لي أن أرحب بكم وأرحب بالضيوف الكرام في منتدى القطاع الخاص لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، والذي تنظمه مؤسسات القطاع الخاص التابعة لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، وهي المؤسسة الإسلامية لتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات، المؤسسة الإسلامية لتنمية القطاع الخاص، والمؤسسة الدولية الإسلامية لتمويل التجارة، وذلك بالشراكة مع وزارة التخطيط والتنمية الاقتصادية وبدعم من منتدى الأعمال لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية ثقة، والشركاء المحليين من مؤسسات حكومية وخاصة بجمهورية مصر العربية وجميع الدول الأعضاء. الهدف الرئيسي للمنتدى هو تسليط الضوء على أنشطة مجموعة البنك وخدماتها ومبادراتها وكل ذلك في الدول الأعضاء بما فيها جمهورية مصر العربية. سيستعرض المنتدى الفرص والتحديات التي تواجه قطاع الأعمال بمختلف أنواعها، وذلك في الدول الأعضاء مع عرض لأدوات التمويل المتاحة مثل خطوط التمويل وتمويل وتنمية التجارة وائتمان الصادرات والاستثمار، كل ذلك على سبيل المثال لا الحصر. علاوة على ذلك فإن هذا الحدث بفعالياته المختلفة سيوفر موائد مستديرة وعروض لفرص التجارة والاستثمار. هذا وسيتضمن برنامج المنتدى لقاءات ثنائية على هامش هذه الفعالية بهدف التواصل وعقد الشراكات وإقامة علاقات تجارية وتبادل الخبرات وعرض لقصص النجاح. نتقدم بالشكر والثناء والتقدير للحضور من كبار المسؤولين الحكوميين والرؤساء والمديرين التنفيذيين في شركات القطاع الخاص المحلية والإقليمية والدولية، وأيضاً المستثمرين ورجال الأعمال وغرف التجارة والصناعة وهيئات تشجيع التجارة والاستثمار، وأيضاً المؤسسات المالية التنموية الإقليمية والدولية. يسرنا أيضاً أن يشاركنا اليوم كبار رجال الأعمال من جميع أنحاء العالم، ويسعدنا مشاركة الكثير من المتحدثين والذين هم على دراية واسعة بالقطاع الخاص والتنمية الاقتصادية، ونتمنى لكل الحضور الاستفادة من هذه الندوات القيمة. والآن السيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي أن أدعو معالي الدكتور محمد سليمان الجاسر رئيس مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية في كلمة ترحيبية بالحضور، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. صاحبة المعالي الدكتورة، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، ضيوفنا الكرام، حضرات السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يطيب لي في البداية أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في منتدى القطاع الخاص لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية في نسخته العاشرة، الذي ينعقد هذه السنة في حلة جديدة على مدى 3 أيام بدلاً من يوم واحد كما كان في السابق. وأود أن أشكركم على حضوركم ومشاركتكم في هذا المنتدى الهام الذي يتخلله 20 فعالية وأكثر من 100 متحدث و55 عارضاً و1500 مشارك يمثلون 70 بلداً، كما يشهد توقيع أكثر من 50 اتفاقية إن التكامل بين القطاعين العام والخاص يشكل ركيزة أساسية للتنمية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية في بلداننا الأعضاء. فالقطاع العام يقع على عاتقه تطوير البنية التحتية والتشريعية لتهيئة مناخ أعمال جاذب للقطاع الخاص ليقوم بدفع عجلة الإنتاج وخلق فرص العمل. ويشبه دور القطاع العام ودور القطاع الخاص جناحي طائر ينوي التحليق إلى آفاق رحبة، لا بد من فعالية الجناحين للتحليق الآمن. لذا يهدف هذا المنتدى إلى تسليط الضوء على أنشطة مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية وخدماتها ومبادراتها لفائدة البلدان الأعضاء في مجالات الاستثمار والتجارة، وكذلك عرض التجارب الناجحة للبلدان الأعضاء والفرص الاستثمارية المتاحة فيها. فعلى سبيل المثال سيتضمن المنتدى جلسة عمل حول منطقة قناة السويس الاقتصادية، وكما تعلمون تعتبر توسعة قناة السويس أحد مشاريع البنية التحتية العملاقة التي عززت موقع مصر التجاري والاستثماري على مستوى العالم. وهنالك أيضاً جلسة مخصصة لعرض مشاريع الشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص في كل من مصر وبنغلاديش والأردن وإندونيسيا وباكستان. السيدات والسادة، يعد تطوير القطاع الخاص إحدى الركائز الأساسية في أولويات مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، وستولي مجموعة البنك أهمية خاصة لدعم التعاون المشترك بين البلدان الأعضاء ولا سيما في القطاع الخاص، وذلك بتعاون وثيق مع شركائها المحليين والعالميين لتمويل المشاريع الاستثمارية وعمليات التجارة وتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات. واسمحوا لي هنا أن أشير إلى بعض الإنجازات الهامة التي حققتها المؤسسات المعنية بالقطاع الخاص في مجموعة البنك في نشاطاتها التجارية والإنمائية في البلدان الأعضاء. ففي مجال تمويل القطاع الخاص اعتمدت المؤسسة الإسلامية لتنمية القطاع الخاص منذ إنشائها في عام 1999 ما مجموعه 505 مشاريع بقيمة إجمالية تصل إلى 7.1 مليار دولار أمريكي في قطاعات المالية والبنى التحتية والزراعة والتصنيع والطاقة، ولها عمليات استثمارية في 50 بلداً عضو. أما المؤسسة الإسلامية لتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات، الذراع التأميني لمجموعة البنك، فقد حققت منذ بدء عملياتها في عام 1994 نمواً ملموساً، حيث بلغت قيمة الأعمال المؤمن عليها أكثر من 88 مليار دولار أمريكي، شملت صادرات وواردات 48 بلداً عضواً من السلع الاستراتيجية والتأمين على مخاطر الاستثمارات ومشاريع البنى التحتية. أما المؤسسة الدولية الإسلامية لتمويل التجارة، فقد وفرت عمليات لتمويل التجارة بلغت 61 مليار دولار أمريكي منذ إنشائها في سنة 2008. يمثل تمويل واردات الطاقة جزءاً مهماً منها، وكما نعلم تشكل واردات الطاقة متطلباً رئيسياً لنشاط الأعمال، كما قدمت المؤسسة تمويلات تجارية إلى المؤسسات الصغيرة والمتوسطة والقطاع الخاص بقيمة 707 ملايين دولار أمريكي في عام 2021. وسيستعرض الرؤساء التنفيذيون لمؤسسات المجموعة في مداخلاتهم تفاصيل الخدمات المقدمة لتمويل القطاع الخاص وتمويل وتنمية التجارة وتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات ومبادرات دعم التجارة والاستثمار فيما بين بلداننا الأعضاء وبناء القدرات لجذب الاستثمار وتنمية الصادرات. أيها السيدات والسادة، إيماناً من البنك الإسلامي للتنمية بأهمية التعريف بالفرص الاستثمارية في بلداننا الأعضاء والترويج لها، أنشأ في سنة 2009 منتدى الأعمال لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية أو ما يسمى ثقة، وقد ساهم منتدى ثقة في تنظيم 488 مؤتمراً استثمارياً في البلدان الأعضاء، كما قام بعقد وتسهيل العديد من الاتفاقيات واستكشاف الفرص الاستثمارية والتجارية التي تتيحها البلدان الأعضاء من خلال توقيع العديد من مذكرات التفاهم مع الغرف التجارية ووكالات تشجيع الاستثمار للاستفادة من المشاريع الاستثمارية المتاحة وعرضها على رواد الأعمال في البلدان الأعضاء من خلال البوابة الإلكترونية لمنتدى ثقة، وترتيب اجتماعات ثنائية بين رواد الأعمال B2B و B2G. معالي الدكتورة هالة، السيدات والسادة، ختاماً أود أن أؤكد لكم أن مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية تتطلع إلى أن يخلص هذا المنتدى إلى توصيات ترقى إلى حجم التحديات والتوقعات، وسوف تتابع مجموعة البنك بكل اهتمام نتائج هذا المنتدى الهام لتساهم بإذن الله بكل فعالية في تنفيذ ما ستتوصلون إليه من توصيات من شأنها تعزيز التجارة البينية وتشجيع تبادل الاستثمارات بين البلدان الأعضاء لتحقيق الشراكة التنموية والاستراتيجية فيما بينها. أعانكم الله ووفقكم لما فيه خير بلداننا الأعضاء وتقدمها وازدهارها، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكراً معالي الرئيس. والآن السيدات والسادة، أدعو معالي الوزيرة الدكتورة هالة السعيد وزيرة التخطيط والتنمية الاقتصادية ومحافظ البنك الإسلامي للتنمية لإلقاء خطابها الرئيسي، فلتتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي الدكتور محمد الجاسر رئيس مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، معالي السادة والسيدات الرؤساء التنفيذيين للمجموعة، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، رؤساء المؤسسات التنموية والتمويلية الإقليمية والدولية، السادة الحضور من القطاع الخاص، ضيوفنا الأعزاء، برحب بحضراتكم جميعاً في مدينة السلام في شرم الشيخ. والحقيقة سعيدة جداً باستضافة مصر لأول مرة منذ 30 عام اجتماعات مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، فبنرحب بحضراتكم جميعاً في شرم الشيخ. ويمكن هذا المنتدى لأول مرة أيضاً بيتم إقامة على هامش اجتماعات مجلس المحافظين منتدى للقطاع الخاص من أجل دعم كل الجهود التنموية للقطاع الخاص في الدول الأعضاء. يمكن جميع المؤسسات التابعة لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية بتقوم بجهد كبير جداً في دعم كل الجهود التنموية لكل الدول الأعضاء، وبالذات لدعم جهود القطاع الخاص في الدول الأعضاء. وخليني أكد لحضراتكم إن النهاردة وإحنا بنتكلم على التحديات التي يواجهها العالم من صدمات مختلفة بتأتي وراء صدمات أخرى. إحنا واجهنا منذ سنتين صدمة خارجية وهي أزمة كوفيد-19، ثم قبل التعافي من هذه الأزمة أو في نهاية التعافي من هذه الأزمة واجه العالم صدمة خارجية أخرى وهي التحديات والتداعيات الخاصة بالأزمة الجيوسياسية. كل هذه التداعيات بتؤثر بشكل كبير جدا على كل دول العالم بما فيها الدول الأعضاء في المنظمة، وبالتالي يحتم علينا جميعا التعاون وإفساح مجال أكثر للقطاع الخاص من أجل كل جهود التنمية. القطاع الخاص مما لا شك فيه هو شريك أساسي في كل الدول وفي كل جهود التنمية، ولكن يمكن هذه الفترة بتبقى أكثر إلحاحاً من أجل مزيد من هذه الشراكات ومن أجل مزيد من هذا الدعم لمساعدة الدولة وتوفير مزيد من فرص العمل. ويمكن لما بنتكلم النهارده على دولة زي مصر، أحب أشارك مع حضراتكم الجهود التي تقوم بها الدولة المصرية لمزيد من إشراك القطاع الخاص في عملية التنمية. يمكن مصر قامت منذ 2016 بمرحلة إصلاح اقتصادي. المرحلة الأولى من الإصلاح الاقتصادي كانت بتقوم على 3 توجهات أساسية. التوجه الأول هو الإصلاح المالي، التوجه الثاني هو الإصلاح النقدي، والمحور الثالث هو تهيئة البنية الأساسية من أجل مزيد من جذب القطاع الخاص. مصر استثمرت في ال5-6 سنوات الماضية ما يقرب من 6 تريليون جنيه استثمارات في البنية التحتية، مما لا شك فيه أن الاستثمارات اللي تمت في البنية التحتية كان هدفها توفير جودة حياة للمواطن المصري، ده أكيد. ولكن السبب الثاني وهو الأساسي وهو أن ما فيش قطاع خاص، سواء قطاع خاص محلي أو قطاع خاص أجنبي، هيأتي إلى دولة فيها بنية تحتية غير مهيئة لهذا القطاع الخاص، من شبكة طرق، من مواني، من كهرباء. كنا يمكن بنعاني في 2014 من انقطاع الكهرباء لعدد من الساعات. انقطاع الكهرباء ده كان يؤثر علينا في المنازل، يؤثر على المصانع، يؤثر على المستشفيات. وبالتالي أي قطاع خاص النهاردة سواء محلي أو أجنبي مش هيجي إلى دولة إلا لديها بنية تحتية مهيئة لجذب هذا القطاع الخاص. وبالتالي ده كان من ضمن المحاور الأساسية في خطة الإصلاح الهيكلي، في خطة الإصلاح الأولى اللي هي بدأت في 2016. المرحلة الثانية مع انتهاء المرحلة الأولى من برنامج الإصلاح الاقتصادي، يمكن الدولة بدأت في المرحلة الثانية من الإصلاح. وخليني برضو أؤكد هنا، عملية الإصلاح هي عملية مستمرة. It's a dynamic process. خطة الإصلاح is a live document، إحنا بنطورها بشكل مستمر، فهو مش خطة إصلاح لأن الدولة بتعاني من مرحلة، إحنا بشكل مستمر بنقوم بعمليات إصلاح بشكل دائم. خطة الإصلاح الهيكلي كان هدفها الحفاظ على مكتسبات المرحلة الأولى من الإصلاح الاقتصادي، ولكن كان لابد من النظر إلى جزء ومكون مهم جدا وهو مكون الاقتصاد الحقيقي. وهنا كان تركيز المرحلة الثانية على القطاعات الإنتاجية. احنا محتاجين الاقتصاد المصري يكون أكثر قدرة على مواجهة الصدمات والأزمات، ويمكن بدأنا الحمد لله هذه الخطة مع زمايلي في الوزارة في وضع الأسس لهذه الخطة قبل أزمة كوفيد، وتمت كنهج الدولة المصرية دائما بشكل تشاركي. كان هناك مجموعة كبيرة من الحوارات المجتمعية اللي بتتم مع القطاع الخاص والمجتمع المدني بشكل مستمر لمدة 16 شهر حتى خرجت هذه الخطة إلى النور في إبريل 21. الخطة بتقوم على إيه؟ بتقوم على زيادة الوزن النسبي لقطاع الصناعة، قطاع الزراعة، قطاع الاتصالات، تكنولوجيا المعلومات، لأن دول ال3 قطاعات الإنتاجية اللي يقدروا يوقفوا أي اقتصاد على رجليه. الاقتصاد الحقيقي والقطاعات الإنتاجية هي الأساس في الاقتصاديات لمواجهة أي الأزمات. الحاجة الثانية إنه ال3 قطاعات دول عندنا مجموعة من المحاور تتقاطع معاهم. محور مهم هو تهيئة البيئة المواتية للقطاع الخاص، وبالتالي مع كل زملائنا من القطاع الخاص في مصر الحوارات مختلفة إن احنا بنشوف إيه التحديات التي تواجه القطاع الخاص ويتم تسهيل هذه التحديات ووضع خطة عمل من أجل إزالة هذه العقبات، من أجل عملية ميكنة سريعة في الجمارك، في الضرائب، في النهارده وضع حوافز لتوطين صناعات معينة. كل ده شيء مهم جدا من أجل النهارده الإسراع بمزيد من مشاركة القطاع الخاص. المحور الثاني المهم طبعا هو خاص بكفاءة سوق العمل، والمحور الثالث المهم وهو تخدير الاقتصاد. احنا بنتكلم النهارده على خطه لابد انها تراعي الابعاد الاقتصاديه والاجتماعيه والبيئيه، لان احنا عايزين نحافظ على مواردنا من اجل الاجيال القادمه. نقطه ثانيه مهمه في تهيئه البيئه للقطاع الخاص ان احنا لاول مره مصر بتنشئ صندوق سيادي صندوق السيادي المصري للاستثمار والتنمية، وهو هذا الصندوق هو ذراع استثماري من الدولة، ولكن هدفه الأساسي هو جذب مزيد من مشاركة القطاع الخاص. فدور الصندوق هو النظر في ما هي الفرص الاستثمارية الموجودة، تحويل هذه الفرص الاستثمارية للقطاع الخاص يرغب في الاستثمار فيها، تحويل هذه الفرص إلى منتجات استثمارية، وتقديم هذه الفرص as a fast track public-private partnership إلى القطاع الخاص للمشاركة في هذه الفرص. فدور الصندوق هو to crowd in more private sector مش to crowd out private sector. الحاجة الثانية المهمة وهو إعلان الدولة المصرية والسيد رئيس الوزراء في المؤتمر الصحفي منذ أيام قليلة، منذ أسبوعين تقريبا، وأعلن تخارج الدولة من عدد من القطاعات وطرح هذه القطاعات إلى القطاع الخاص، سواء كانت استراتيجيك أو في البورصة المصرية. ويمكن خليني أكد لحضراتكم وأنا بتكلم على استثمارات الدولة والفترة اللي الدولة دخلت تستثمر فيها من 2014 إلى ال5-6 سنوات اللي بعد كده، عشان تهيئ البيئة للقطاع الخاص وعشان ترفع من جودة البنية التحتية دي، زي ما بقول دي كانت فترة استثنائية. ليه؟ لأن احنا كنا خارجين من فترة عدم استقرار سياسي وأمني من ما بين 2011 إلى 2014 إلى الفترة اللي تم انتخاب فيها السيد الرئيس. الفترة السابقة لذلك كانت فترة عدم استقرار سياسي وأمني، وبالتالي لم يحدث أي نوع من الاستثمارات. بالعكس احنا مرينا ببعض السنوات اللي كان فيها نمو سالب في الاقتصاد المصري، وبالتالي كان مهم جدا ان احنا الفترة دي في فترة قصيرة دولة تدخل بشكل استثنائي تضخ حجم كبير من الاستثمارات لرفع جودة البنية التحتية وجعل البنية التحتية مهيئة طبعا لجودة حياة المصريين، وفي نفس الوقت من أجل تهيئة القطاع الخاص. ويمكن بكرة حضراتكم تشرفونا في لقاء السيد رئيس الوزراء الساعة 9 صباحا في عرض رؤية الدولة والخطة التوجه الاستثماري للدولة المصرية بشكل أكثر تفصيلا. مرة تانية أنا سعيدة جدا بوجودي في هذا اللقاء، سعيدة جدا بوجود مجموعة كبيرة من القطاع الخاص موجود معانا. دايما القطاع الخاص هو الشريك الأساسي في عملية التنمية، هو المشغل الرئيسي لقوة العمل. بشكر كل زمايلي وزميلاتي من الحضور ومن الوزارة على تنظيم مجموعة من اللقاءات مع الزملاء من مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية. ومرة تانية برحب بحضراتكم جميعا في شرم الشيخ، برحب بضيوفنا، بتمنى لحضراتكم لقاءات مثمرة وموفقة بإذن الله. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا معالي الوزيرة دكتورة هالة سعيد. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the first session, we will now watch a short video about the private sector institutions of the Islamic Development Bank Group. Let's follow the video.
Our world today is full of opportunities, but it's also full of challenges, both to business and to investment. For countries to develop their economies, achieve their sustainable development goals, and create new jobs, they need to have access to finance and be able to mitigate political and commercial risk. So to cater to the needs of the private sector in its members' country, the Islamic Development Bank Group, ISDB Group, created 3 dedicated business arms. Working with ISDB Group organizations means you gain more support for your projects, Islamic finance for your trade, investment, and Islamic insurance against business risk. Attracting investments and exports is vital to a thriving economy. The Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC, helps OIC members countries achieve this goal through the provision of its insurance solutions. These Sharia-compliant solutions enlarge the scope to cross-border trade and enable foreign investment by giving you confidence to enter new markets in a risk-mitigated manner. Our solutions can help unlock transactions, facilitating foreign investment while making your business more competitive.
The Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISEC, has a strong track record of dealing and supporting the private sector through its credit enhancements and risk mitigation solutions for financial institutions and companies.
The Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, applies fintech and focuses its finance on development projects that aim to create job opportunities, encourage exports, and boost the economic growth of its member countries. ICD builds partnerships to establish collective financing. ICD provides advisory services to develop equity and debt capital markets. ICD's solutions will help your business achieve its ambitions.
ICD aims to achieve its mandate by ensuring financial sustainability and creating development impact to achieve the SDG of our member countries. The SMEs remain a primary focus for ICD. ICD can promote the ISDB group synergy effort and activities.
To catalyze trade, we founded the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC. By enhancing intra-OIC trade, we contribute to the growth of imports and exports in our member countries to strengthen their economies. With integrated trade solutions, including trade finance and trade development programs, we enable our member countries and private sector gain access to our solutions to benefit from cross-border trade activities.
ITFC is mandated to advance trade and improve lives. We have renewed our focus on SMEs and private sector through designing and providing integrated trade solutions, where we are combining finance and trade-related capacity building activities to support market access and promote export capabilities.
Together, our organizations address every challenge your business faces through a comprehensive partnership formula. ICD finances your projects. ITFC finances and boosts your trade deals. ISEC ensures your investment and export transactions. And ISDB's Group Business Forum, FICA, promotes synergy among ISDB group member countries. The result is a perfect ecosystem for your business to grow.
And now we will start our special session focusing on repositioning the development priorities for the private sector, which will be joined by the CEOs of the private sector institutions of the Islamic Development Bank Group and the President and CEO of Sweden Electric. I would also like to invite the chair of the session, Honorary Dr. Nada Masoud, the Economic Advisor to the Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Egypt, and member of the Board Executive Directors, ISDB, to come to the stage to present the CEOs and to start this session.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sharm el-Sheikh and to the Private Sector Forum. I will not say much about the importance of the Private Sector Forum and what we're expecting out of it. I think Dr. Hela and Dr. Gasser, they both said it all, so I don't want to waste any time. I just want to ask, please, our esteemed panelists to come to the podium in no special order. Dr. Osama Qaisi, the CEO of ISEC, Engineer Hani Sombor, CEO of ITFC, Mr. Ayman Sigini, CEO of ISD, and Engineer Ahmed Swedi, President and CEO of Sweden Electric. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll get directly to the questions. I think we are all in agreement about the importance of the private sector. It has always been important, but it's all the more important as we stand now, given on the one side the major developments and the changing landscape in the global economy. During COVID, post-COVID, and the conflict in the Black Sea, and also in our countries, which are mostly the member countries of the Islamic Development Bank, are actually almost half are least developed countries, and the rest are amongst the developing countries and emerging markets. So the importance of the private sector and its role in being the engine of growth and changing the supply chains is all the more important. But let me start by asking, please, all my panelists, what do you think, just to set the discussion, can you give us an idea where we are now and what is the scope of the issue at hand? Where are we now? Where we stand? We start by Dr. Osama.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would like to extend our appreciation to the great people of Egypt and the government of Egypt for the great hospitality in the city of peace, something that we are really in great need these days in order for us to tackle the major issues that we are confronting globally. Honorable Dr. Lada, we cannot sit today and discuss issues pertaining to the global community without talking about the financial crisis that we have all witnessed, the pre-COVID, between the trade war between the US and China that has affected all of us gravely, have affected supply chains, and it has divided the world. Similarly, after that, we have entered the period of COVID, where we have been detached from our communities, from our daily lives. It has as well created a great divide among societies and have created new realities in respect of the digitization, most of all. And while we are looking for exits, and we're working hard as a global community to exit the COVID pandemic, here we are facing another grave challenge that is affecting food security, and this is manifesting itself in the war that is happening in Eastern Europe. These are the issues at hand today. These are the challenges that we are facing as a global community, as Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and this is where we have to start our dialogue between the MDBs, between the governments, and between the private sector. This is why we are here to extend our hand to all of you to discuss issues that are pertinent to the global community and to Egypt. So we are here to discuss these things with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Osama. Engineer Hani, I think we have problems with supply chains, we have new reality, and we are trying to exit the pandemic, and we are faced by new challenges. So.
Thank you very much. I would like also to say that I'm very honored and happy to be here in Egypt and also with this August gathering to discuss the very important really topics regarding the future of our investments and development processes in member countries. In addition to what dear colleague Osama said, that which he described rightly the whole scene where we are today. Despite of still the high uncertainty, we are very optimistic. Our main concern now is actually, as you just rightly said it, is that we would like, member countries to continue to be resilient, because this is not going to be the last crisis. I think crisis will build muscles, and that's why also, not only for member countries, but also for institutions like us. We went through many crises since the establishment, for example, of Itfc, and what is really important is really to continue to build the muscles of the organizations and to sustain development in member countries. I think this is what we should really focus on, is how to really be able to adapt and to move on. Yesterday we had Corona. Today we have the geopolitical issues. Tomorrow we have the monkeys boxes, and after that, so things will continue to come. There's only one thing that we should do, is that to really keep resisting and have a stronger, member countries more resilient, so that we can face this in the future.
Thank you very much, Engineer Hangi. So we have high uncertainty, but we are still optimistic, and we think the way forward is through increasing the resilience of our countries. Mr. Ayman, what do you think?
Hello. Yeah, basically, ICD is looking at 3 different directions. One way is actually to enhance the private sector interest to go for more digitalization. And second is SDG. And third is making sure that they are more dynamic in the debt capital market and the equity capital market world. So in each one of these, I think we have learned from the pandemic that technology and digitalization has been a great influencer and great source of revenue for lots of institutions. At the same time, it helped to give all the required monetization or monitoring their businesses, making sure that they'll be able to reach out and have inclusion of even clientele base that they didn't have before. SDG is a great influencer on how to ensure the governance of the institutions that are in place, and it depends on how you look at the institution governance. It will become a more sustainable way to have a better future. The third is for debt capital market and equity capital market. It's very important that we get out of actually only the local funding and go out and find out what the world has to give you. And being in the capital market will have higher sources of funding, has more dynamic sources of funding, it has more governance requirement, but it's all good for the sustainability of any SME. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayman. So now we've been speaking about the private sector. We will hear from the private sector, from Engineer Ahmed Swedi. Please tell us, what do you think of the scope of the issue at hand? The CEOs have set the stage. Supply chains, we have problems in them, we're facing new reality, we're optimistic, and the way forward is resilience, which should be achieved through digitalization, good governance, and increasing and raising funds through capital markets. What do you think?
I just want to say that about the Islamic Bank. We have been working with the Islamic Bank and Isaac since 2003. We're working since 2003. When first, during 2000, we was almost a local company working in Egypt 100%. On these days, we want to export and to work outside of Egypt. There was no way of financing or even supporting the exports. So the first project we did was 6 factors was the support of the bank in Syria, and this was really great support. So the only bank supporting this, and even some projects in Sudan, which was impossible to be done and financed, they also supported us even in Sudan. And by the way, also we are now in the meantime working in 50 countries worldwide, exporting 110 countries worldwide, 110. The Isaac is supporting us very, very much in the insurance and in the credit. I think if without this support, we could not do even 50% of what we are doing, especially for the exports. Of course, the situation is very tough worldwide, and as a private sector, we need support from the governments and even from the banks to grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed. And this takes me to Dr. Osama. You supported H3D Expand. How do you think insurance can help private sector, particularly in relation to SDGs? How can you support private sector to achieve SDGs? How can insurance support private sector, whether export credit or against political risk? What can ISA do?
Thank you, Doctor. I go back to what I have said earlier, that the current conditions that we are living, they have created a new reality. And this new reality has created, new priorities for the governments where we are operating for the member countries, and similarly to the needs of the private sector. Before the pandemic, the required amount that was needed by governments to sustain and to support the Sustainable Development Goal was in the tune of $5 trillion a year. And during these days, we used to have 50% of that amount, which is $2.5 trillion, that was a gap that we have to find into finance. And this is where the premise comes that Sustainable Development Goals happens only when you create a partnership environment between governments and between the private sector. Similarly, we have to address here the challenges we are facing, and this is statistics coming from the OECD, where they tell you that the last decade, which has happened, that means 10 years, there's a setback because of the COVID and because of the war in Ukraine that are happening there. And this is exacerbating issues of member countries where we are operating in respect of hunger, in respect of poverty, and in respect of the support that we are providing to the private sector. Priorities have changed, priorities have shifted, but we remain resilient to work with member countries, and here specifically I talk about Egypt, where we always partner with them at the group level and at ISEC in order to understand their priority. And when we look at the National Development Plan of Egypt or Vision 2030, SDGs are embedded in it, and they lead you to where 2030 vision of the SDGs should take you. What we have done through the SDGs and to support, and this is to look specifically in one of the most important sectors that Egypt always, during our dialogue, invite us to focus on, is the support of the small and medium enterprises. ISEC has been a great partner to the banking industry, and here I'm talking specifically in supporting the exports and the imports of strategic goods. For example, during the pandemic, we have been partnering with the government of Egypt in support of the Bank al-Ahli, and we have worked with them in respect of having a fund to support the SMEs. Similarly, we have worked with other institutions from the UAE in order to work on a green fund to support green financing as well. Going from there, I have to thank the partnership with Suwedi Electric. They've been great partners for us, and they have helped us understand more of the market, and we understand the importance of our solutions in respect of them to expand outside Egypt and to support their export business specifically. Another important business that is highlighted in the speech of Her Excellency the Minister this morning is to attract foreign direct investment, which is extremely important to attract the funds and to help them partner with the private sector to do very lucrative projects for them and in order for them to create the jobs. Whenever you have a foreign direct investor entering into a country, majority of the labor force will be used from the country where they are entering and investing over there. Very critical part of our business, and we have seen it grow exponentially during the last 6 years, is the foreign direct investments that we are supporting. Here in Egypt, we are very proud that we have supported Al-Tazar Energy in supporting the Lebanon project for the solar power. We have been very helpful in working with the government in respect to work on this very important project. We have several initiatives in Egypt where we are working on the private sector to support the exports and the imports. And in respect to the foreign direct investments, we have the international banks community that we work with the support of the government in order to work on very crucial projects as per the Vision 2030.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. I think you said a very worrying number. The 5 trillion is now down by 50%, 2.5 trillion. We have a gap of 2.5 trillion. Engineer Hani, what do you think MDBs and PFIs can do? How can they support private sector to bridge the gap, and how can they support private sector in its role to achieve SDGs, since the governments will not be able to bridge this gap? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all have to agree first that the role of the private sector in the development process is quite important. And definitely the private sector is a major stakeholder of any development process in any country. And I think private sector being a source of income, also creating jobs, employment, and in addition to that, of course, providing all the goods and services. All of this will work toward enhancing the lives of people all over the world. So we do recognize the private sector as a major player in the process itself. Of course, as MDBs and ITFCs, one of them is actually we are trying to also partner up with the private sector to be able to also support the national development plans, support really the economies of member countries, and of course the support of such, the support comes in many different forms actually. We also think that the private sector needs the capitals. There's a big gap, financing gap that we always try to fulfill. And also at the same time, we try to build partnership because we know that there are certain areas where we need to support, like you mentioned this morning, Her Excellency, the Governor said that private sector needs, they have priorities, like they need infrastructure, they need good regulations, they need good investment environment. So all of this we try to support really the private sector through that. In addition to that, private sector needs also knowledge. And that's why sometimes we need to really work on exchanging knowledge and through programs like the reverse linkages programs and capacity building. As far as the challenges of the private sector, there are many, but I said with the crisis, the private sector are becoming more and more resilient actually. Governments, they step in and they try actually to support. We have seen that during the COVID-19, how governments, they really came in and supported the private sector. In ITFC, we felt also after COVID-19 is that we need to revisit our strategy to re-strategize. And we felt that we cannot escape really having the private sector as one of the pillars that we need to support. Definitely since inception, we tried to provide all the support to the private sector in two ways. The first one was actually providing line of financing and to national banks and also to commercial banks in member countries so that they can relay them to the private sector. We supported also the private sector through extending, I would say, a number of programs to build their capacities to be able to really be more resilient, as I said this morning, especially the SMEs, which really constitute mostly 80 to 85% of the economic issue of member countries. We provide programs like ITFC SME Development Program, where we try to help SMEs to really submit bankable projects to the banks. Commercial banks, they don't like to work usually with small institutions. However, definitely when we have such programs, we reduce the decline rate and also build the capacities so that they can also sustain their performance in terms of governance, in terms of knowing how to do business and so on. A number of projects were implemented in Asia and Africa to support the SME. During the COVID-19, and after, we felt that also the private sector is going to need more partnership with governments, because now the PPPs became more actually important. So we play the role of a catalyst really to support this area. In 2000 alone, 2021 alone, ITFC has really provided and mobilized more for the private sector than the usual business that we do with the member countries. sovereign, I refer here to the sovereign financing. Overall, by that year, we mobilized 4.5 billion US dollars from the markets for the private sector. And this is, of course, was the highest since the establishment of ITFC. Also in the second phase, where we are focusing on the pandemic recovery or recovery from the pandemic, we felt that our role to support the private sector, we have allocated 700 million US dollars during that phase to support really the trade financing needs of the private sector. We repurposed a lot of work, a lot of funds that were used in member countries to support also the private sector. And of course, this came after what we call the response phase, where countries were in their need and really pressing needs for medical and health equipment and so on. ITFC has supported the private sector also in a combined, products, which is called the integrated solutions that we provide to the private sector. And I say it all the time, financing alone is not going to be enough really to support, especially during crises like the one we go through. You need financing, but also you need to build the capacities. You need financing, but also you need to really, skill and reskill, the different, the human capitals who are working in this kind of work. If you want me to talk about Egypt, we have a lot really to speak about. ITFC has a really large portfolio in Egypt. Egypt is a strategic partner of ITFC since inception, one of the largest shareholders, and definitely we have a very big portfolio in Egypt, exceeding now or close to exceed 14 billion US dollar in terms of providing really support to the energy sector and also recently to the food security in Egypt and also to the SMEs through also line of financing. We have done that through 5 framework agreements in Egypt. All went very well. Implementation was great, successful. And here from this place, I really would like to extend my thanks also to the Egyptian government and all those the counterparts who are working with here in Egypt for their really professionalship and also their commitment toward really making things work and implement smoothly all the operations and transactions. And I think that is quite a golden track record for a country like Egypt, and we continue to support. We closely to finish the framework agreement, which is around 3 billion, and now we are in the coming few days, we'll inshallah hear good news about the new one, and we will continue to support and stress on the need to support really the exporters in Egypt. Now we are about also to have a special academy for the exporters in Egypt, and also have training program, incubators for Egypt, businessmen. There is a very special program that we have implemented for the young, also graduates from schools and from universities specializing in trade, where we provide training for them so that they can be really accommodated and they can find jobs easily. And maybe the list will go long and long. I don't want to take much of your time, Dr. Nader. Fadal.
Thank you very much, Engineer Hani. That was really a very insightful intervention. So now you are extending lines of financing through banks. You are extending programs to the private sector to build capacity, and you are increasing partnerships with the government, helping private sector have partnerships with the government. Mr. Ayman, you are the institution that helps develop the private sector. What other opportunities you think the private sector need to build back better?
Basically, we in ICD have 5 business lines. The first one is debt capital market and debt, which is a main focus for us to see and find ways to get institutions to focus on SDGs that are related to the projects, and we will be interested then to provide the right capital market instruments or the right funding. PPP, which is public-private partnership, is another source of focus that might be useful for the private sector to enhance their approaches to the businesses that they're looking for. The third business line that we are looking for and have opportunities to explore in is more or less the term finance, which is mainly used for the private sector in their infrastructure projects or long-term opportunities that they're looking for. Another way of also providing the right support for the institutions is through equity investments. And those equity investments might be in way of partnerships, or we could also enhance it to take it to the next level, whereby we could IPO some of the institutions that we invest in. The fifth would be through our 110 financial institutions that are within our member countries. So I'm hoping that within Egypt we do have an opportunity to be a door and window towards Africa, whereby we have 42 financial institutions that could be a great support for the Egyptian businesses and overall for all the communities of businesses within Africa to trade between each other. Now, we believe also it might be very helpful if the governments provide certain incentive plans for investors that invest in SDGs. Another way of doing it also to have a structure and a clear framework for those financial institutions or the private sector to understand if they do business in such a way, they will be actually rewarded. And maybe we provide more training programs that specifically help the businesses overall and maybe have the right people, because usually SMEs or institutions in general are not made from the building or computers. It's all about people. So if we get the people in the right way, and that might take it to the right direction. Last but not least is digitalization, which is a key important factor in any environment right now today, to be local or to be in the region or globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayman. And Engineer Ahmed, you've heard all the interventions, and Swedi Electric is actually one of the Egyptian champions when it comes to investing in international business and outside Egypt. As you see the way for your company to grow, and given the modes, we would like to hear about the modes you think you will achieve this growth through, experts, acquisitions. What kind of expansion you see yourself increasing your footprint in overseas market, and what was discussed? Do you think this helps you expand your business, or there are other things you need to ask MDBs and DFIs for? Thank you.
Thank you. Just as I mentioned that we in 2000 we was only one company working in Egypt, and now we are operating in 50 countries worldwide, and at the same time exporting to 110 countries worldwide. And really the support of the ISIC and the Islamic Bank by the insurance, this supported us very, very much. And I think without this insurance on our exports, we cannot reach this. The same thing also as example for our expansions in Africa. We have been working with the African Exim Bank for also insurance, and also for supporting us in financing a lot of projects. Also, without this support from African Exim in some projects in Africa, we cannot even expand in these countries. So what I mean that really the support of the financials like Islamic Bank and others for the private sector will differ great. For this reason, you can see how the Europeans are exporting billions and billions European companies, Siemens, Alstom, all these companies, with the support and the financing of their governments. So I mean that if really the governments and is supporting the private sector, we can 10 times do our revenue. As I see, no, there is a great opportunity in Egypt. As example, I believe that Egypt, one of the best manufacturing regions in the region, places in the region, for a lot of things, for the labor, for the electricity, for the infrastructure which have been invested the last 5 years, which is extraordinary. For how we export Europe in 2 days, how we export the Gulf region in 2 days. So a really great opportunity for this. At the same time, I believe there's a great opportunity to grow in the renewable business, also to invest in it, and even how to help the Egyptian companies and all the Arab companies to cooperate together. I believe that there is a great opportunity, especially in this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed. So it's clear what you need and how important a role MDBs can play in expanding your business and growing. But let's take a step back and look at something before growing, the food security issues that we have, Dr. Osama. We do have a serious crisis, and when it comes to food security, which is it's the basic need of people, where do you think Isaac can help? What do you think Isaac can do in partnership with the private sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nada. We started talking about the challenges we are facing globally, and I have to start by saying that the impact of the conflict in Ukraine cannot be overstated. Although the risk is not so far broad-based as much as the COVID, but still it is underpinning many challenges that we are facing. We have here to agree that the fallout from the Ukraine war has exacerbated the negative effects that we have all faced from COVID-19, and specifically for the member states, for the IDB group, because majority of them are least developed member countries, and they have been facing fragility for years and years, be it economic setbacks, be it wars or geopolitical issues. Sovereigns globally that have very close economic and financial ties to Russia, in my opinions, are the ones that are the most at risk from moving forward and overcoming the challenges from this war that is in Ukraine. When we put things in context, and we can see the dependency of the member states of the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, on the wheat and the maize that comes from Ukraine specifically. 40% of all the grains that is supplied to Africa and to the member countries in the MENA of the OIC come from Ukraine. And this will show you the shortage that is happening in the supply of food. And this is where we are facing the food crises that we are facing today. If you allow me just here, Doctor, to mention here about the OECD, they have mentioned here that the average percentage hike in prices from January 2022 has been staggering: 88% for wheat, 79% for fertilizers, 42% for maize, and 11% for gold. This is in addition to the huge rises that we are facing in crude oil prices globally. So if we combine all of these issues, in addition to what we have suffered for the last couple of years from the COVID negative impact on the economy, where we have seen rising levels of prices in food and in energy, exacerbating the inflation rate globally, we can see the setbacks that are happening in fragile states where they do not have, the right ecosystem in order to support their citizens. And specifically here, we have to talk about rural areas where there is shortage of food supply historically in these member countries. If we look closer to statistics and to cases that we are facing here today, I can mention closer to me, in my home country, Lebanon, it is one of the most affected members from the food security issues that is being raised, from the war in Ukraine. I can mention here also Somalia and Mozambique. And here we have to talk in respect of the higher social and political risks that are associated with this challenges that we are facing. This when I talk in respect of the political risk insurance as an insurer where I cover the political risk aspects, we foresee that we might see in some member countries of the OIC and of ISEC and IDB some unrest and civil commotion that might be rising because of the issues that we are facing. So the issue does not only stem from food security, it has implication on the social network of the country, and at the same time of the stability of some regimes in the member countries where we are operating. We talk here closer to where we are today in Egypt, for example. An overall food import bill for Egypt is low compared to the other members that we have in the membership of ISEC, but still destabilizing effect of the war in Ukraine can help destabilize it. And this is where I want to move into what government should be doing, because here in Egypt we have seen a rapid action taken from the government in order for them to secure and to continue, the importation of the basic food necessities for the people of Egypt in order to elevate the inflationary measures and the cost rising in the price of fuel. And we would expect to see at the level of the membership of ISEC similar measures that will be taken by government in order for them to stabilize it amid this global crisis that we are facing. When we talk about the food and agricultural policy, Egypt has an extremely prudent policy that is there, but there is a knock-on effect at the level of the membership of ISEC in respect of the food and agriculture policy, because we are imposing export bans globally, and we have seen that happening from the part of India last April, where they have stopped completely the exports of their wheat, and they are one of the largest exporters of wheat, coming after Russia and Ukraine. And this is happening because of the drought that is anticipated in India. So it's not just we have the issue of Ukraine and Russia stopping their exportation. We are seeing here that other member countries of the global community, to safeguard the interest and the inflationary measures and the price hike, and to control the knock-on effect on their population, direct negative impact, they are stopping their export, which is going to further exacerbate the issues that we are facing in food security that is here. Food system inequality that we are seeing today is manifesting itself with the shortage of food supply globally and supply chain disruptions. Similarly, we had during COVID, we have inequality in the distribution of the vaccine. All of this is creating disparity across the globe. And it has, in my opinion, a far-reaching impact that is negative on the global community. I come again to ISEC. We believe that the solutions that we have in respect of the trade credit and the political risk insurance can play and has played a very important role in stabilizing matters of security of food in respect of the member countries where we are. ISEC, if we look globally since its establishment close to 30 years ago, we have supported close to $88 billion in investment and in trade transactions. Majority of that was in support of the exports and import of strategic goods, and all of this fall within the strategy of the corporation to move hand by hand with the national development plan of the member countries. And it was evident, and it was mentioned by my colleague Engineer Hani here, about the one move that we had as a group in response of the COVID, and similarly now we are moving with all the resources that we have and all the solutions at the level of IDB, ICD, ITFC, and ISEC in order to put these programs in support of the member countries. Egypt, we have supported thus far close to 7.5 billion since inception. Majority of it is for exports. And we are working closely and with the direction of the line ministries in order for us to see the current priorities in order to invest. We anticipate as a group and as ISEC to have further cooperation with the Egyptian government. By yesterday, we have inaugurated our office, regional hub that is in Cairo. And this shows a further commitment from the part of the group and the three institutions. And us as ISEC, we have committed for the next 3 years, $3 billion in support of exports and investment project to go forward, and they will all fall within the scope of the food security matters that are there. Very quickly, I have to talk here about a few initiatives because we work in partnership. The same way we have a partnership internally within the group, we cannot work in alienation without the partnerships that we have outside the group. We work in partnership with other MDBs, the likes of MIGA, of the World Bank, where there is a close coordination globally on projects to support member countries that are common. Similarly, we have Afrexim Bank, that they are here in Egypt, and my colleague, I'm sure Engineer Hani, he will talk about the Africa Trade Bridges and the great job that under his leadership that Arab Africa Trade Bridges is doing. We are working on a guarantee program within the Arab Africa Trade Bridges that will help the insurance division or the insurance pillar within the program in order to support member countries overcome these challenges that are there. There are high priorities. These are elevated, heightened because of the issues that we are facing, and we foresee that these issues will continue for the foreseeable future. I'm not, don't want to be pessimistic, but I am not positive about the near future of how things are going to develop. We have to stay positive, but everything around us, it gears us toward being cautious and to move collectively in order for us to deliver. Last sentence I want to finish here. When I finished with partnership, partnership is not just at the level of MDBs. Partnership should happen at the level of the OIC member countries, where collectively we have to work to support the private sector, to create the ecosystem in order for us to deliver what is intended to the individual, to the person that is Muslim within the OIC member countries, and to Egypt, where we are here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. Dr. Osama says we have to be cautious. Statistics say we have to be cautious. 40% of our region's grains come from Russia and Ukraine. And not only, but also India will stop exporting too because of the drought. So we have to be cautious. But maybe, yes, we do export 40% of our needs. But again, some of the countries in the region have the capacity and the capability to cover this gap. So how do you think, Engineer Hani, how do you think, what is the specific role ITFC can play in partnership with the private sector to promote intra-regional trade? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'll be Osama, I'll be a little bit more optimistic, not very pessimistic. I still insist that we, despite of what we are going through, is that it's the time to really be able to be relevant as institutions to member countries with the different crises that we are going to go through. And as I repeat again, we will see things are going to happen, la samahullah, in the future, but we have to live with it. And how we live with it is by really being more resilient. Being more resilient is that we need to always have institutions that can adapt, countries they can absorb these shocks, and try always to continue, because this is part of really our mandate. As I said, ITFC, is not only partnering with the external partners, but also we do partner with internally. We do have a lot of work, the three entities, ICD, ISEC, and ITFC. We have a lot really of synergy that we are very keen to keep enhancing. And we do have a forum that brings the three organizations together, because we want to maximize the impact of our work on member countries. We are a very unique institution. We have trade arms, we have private sector, we have products that is insurance products, So when you combine all of this, definitely we will be meeting more of the needs of the private sector. Itfc, as I said, it's not only a financing arm, but also we provide and focus on building the capacities of member countries, building the capacities of institutions. In addition to that, we do also provide advisory services to member countries and to the institutions. We are specialized not only in trade finance, but also in Islamic banking, and we try always to support newly established organizations by providing these advisory services. Now, being a unique South-South organization, we feel that also the private sector is a major player in a South-South, or what they call it today, the South triangular cooperation, where it is really nothing but actually exchanging knowledge and also transferring technology. And the third one is, of course, the being innovative. And in the area of innovation, we added little also more on the digitization as well, because we felt that also, in addition to the previous product I spoke about, is actually we need to extend hand to member countries and institutions to build their digital capabilities to face also the future change in the way we do business. In the way we do business already started, and I think it's going to evolve even more in the future. So I think the private sector, if we are focusing on the private sector, I think that's how we can really support. As of today, I said last year only, we 70% almost of our financing went actually south-south to member countries. We are meeting our promise to enhance intra-OIC trade. Out of the $6.5 billion we financed last year, we were able actually to allocate almost 4.6 billion for the intra-OIC trade. In addition to that, I think Itfc has one additional feature here, where we have a capacity to mobilize resources from the market. We have a history of mobilizing resources. Since establishment in 2008, we are almost now close to $42 billion that were mobilized. This, of course, is really dedicated not only to the sovereign, but also dedicated to the private sector as well. Of course, one of the things that we do help also in Itfc is through the programs that Dear Osama was talking about, which is the programs that is led by Itfc in cooperations with many partners. At the top of them, of course, is IDB and also ISEC, ICD, Badia, Africa Exim Bank. All of us are actually working under an umbrella of a very, very important program for the private sector, which is actually the Arab-Africa Trade Bridge. We held here in Cairo a month ago the ministerial meeting for the Board of Governors for this program, and it showed how strong is the support from the African and from member countries like Saudi Arabia, where we had also the presence of His Excellency the Minister of Trade, Dr. Majid Al-Qasabi, and all other ministers. The chairmanship, of course, was the Dr. Hala Saeed, the Minister of Planning and Economic Planning. And I think that shows how important is this program. This program is unique for the private sector because it tackles infrastructure, it tackles insurance, investment with ICD, and it tackles also trade finance. And the first program the executive committee approved was around $5 billion in the coming 5 years. We will be continuing to support member countries through these programs. The other important programs are the Itfc SME Development Program. As I said, we try to teach and handhold really the small SMEs, especially in the African continent, to be able to submit bankable projects and be able really to talk to banks. Not only that, but we also train the banks to be able to talk to the SMEs at the same time. Because if they don't talk to each other, then you will have a high declination rate at the end of the day. So this diverse products that ITFC, ICD, and ISEC are providing, actually it is all now available for the private sector. And definitely here in Egypt, I see that we are working very closely now with the exporters, and we are working also with national banks to be able to support the private sector in Egypt. We already started with Miss Mida for the small and medium, in cooperation with the Ministry of Trade. In Egypt, we don't want to stop at the $14 billion that ITFC allocated, but we want to continue really to be a strategic partner with the Egyptian government, who have really shown really great dedication and high professionalship in handling all the development plans. And there we see Egypt, even during the COVID-19, they have really recorded a growth at that time, which means that reforms are working, and the partnership between the public and private sector in Egypt is actually succeeding. We are, as multi-development institutions, we will have all these products available to support this for the future. So last point, not least, I will speak about it later on, which is actually the Aid for Trade for the Arab states. This is a different program.
Yeah. Lots of efforts, lots of ideas, lots of initiatives. I know you need a session on your own, very interesting and enriching. Thank you very much. Mr. Ayman, I only have a couple of minutes for you, so please, Engineer Hani explained that it is important, the South and intra-regional trade is very important, yet building the own capacities of the country is as important, or it comes first. So what do you think is the best way to engage the private sector technology in local markets to build on the country's own resources, particularly for Egypt? In a couple of minutes, please. Thank you.
Basically, we believe that guaranteeing the innovators an exclusive right to the new product or innovation that they have created is an important aspect, and having more or less the intellectual property right protected will take the institution to a great extent. Now, technology requires a lot of ecosystem around it. You need to have angel investors, you need to have venture capitalists, you need to have off-takers, and then eventually you'd like to have investors that takes it to the private equity level and take it to IPO. So having that whole process in place helps innovation and improves that. Next point will be having the government funding, or ensuring that there are some source of support funding, because innovation takes a lot of resources, and without having such an attraction or a motivator, you'll find that most of the technology experts might not be staying around until they go to places where they find the right sources. Third would be a tax break, and that will help a lot for those tax payers that are in the technology innovation to really be able to enhance their technologies to a greater extent, and not being that worried about how much they require to pay for this. Cooperation between government and publicly owned universities and other innovation centers might take the institution to a great extent and have it move forward. Another thing that we as ICD have done here in Egypt is what we call FinLit, which is a financial literacy program, which we have done here in Egypt, entrepreneurs to prepare them to access finance, which was participated by more than 100 entrepreneurs. And I believe more activities as such that really supports them, puts in the training programs, and really surround them with the right investor base and offtake will take this country to a great extent. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayman. Engineer Ahmed, in a nutshell, in a couple of minutes, actually, in a tweet, in 140 characters, you tell me what investment opportunities you think Egypt can offer for international investors. Thank you.
I believe really what Egypt can offer, this of course, which between Russia and Ukraine, I believe it's a perfect opportunity for Egypt. I hope, of course, they'll be better. I hope things will be finished. But for Egypt, I think there's a lot of investors that have drawn with Russia. The same thing we have in Ukraine. So it's now Egypt is one of the best places to be, the industrial hub in the region, especially with all the circumstances, infrastructure, labor, education, all these things. So I believe we can be really the major investors, especially for manufacturing. And also there's a lot of new now, there people shifting from the normal cars to the electric cars. And this is a complete new investments which we done. Also, I believe Egypt can be one of the main things, especially for the export. You know, in the last year, we made around 9 factories. And most of our factories we are building, we put 50% is for the export. Because now we are exporting around 70% of our production to Europe and the Gulf and Egypt and Africa. So Egypt really is able to compete. We are able to compete with Turkey as manufacturing, with India, with even China, especially after the big problems that happened in the logistic and shipping from China take a lot of time, and if the cost of shipping now became incredible. So you have to be near your customer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed. I think we are ending with a positive note, which is a good thing. Now we have room for one question, and please I ask you to introduce yourself, say the question is directed to who, and please be very brief. And then we'll watch a video, a 1-minute video. Questions, please.
My name is, good morning. My name is Fatima. I come from Senegal. Our project is, my name is Fatima. I come from Senegal. I am the president of African Businesswoman. We have a project to modernize, my English is bad, to modernize all capital in Africa, to make green cities efficient, and we are looking for finance. You told that you have finance with Turkish and Indian to go to develop Africa. I ask you, what if you are interested of our project to bring finance for us? Thank you very much.
Please.
Sure. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Basma. I think Engineer Hani will answer this question, the financing for the modernization in Senegal. Thank you.
I thought she was talking about supporting businesswomen in Senegal. Is that? Yeah, I think this is one of the areas also we can work on, is to maybe replicate what we are doing here in Egypt. We have a very important program in Egypt called She Trade, where we are trying really to support businesswomen in Egypt to be able to conquer to new markets and also understand new regulations, and support them finding also ways and means to really promote their products all over. So I think this program in Egypt is one of the most successful programs, and it really tackles, in addition to that, the training for women and also the capacity building, in addition of providing a digital platform for the women, whether in Egypt, of course, but we can do, as I said, replicate this in countries like Senegal. In addition to that, they can also benefit from the SMEs development program if they are smaller corporates, if I understand. But definitely, the woman is part of the inclusive strategy that Itfc and maybe also my colleagues here have as a group.
Thank you very much, Engineer Hani. I think Mr. Ayman has also something to add here.
Yeah. We have actually in ICD explored opportunities of green sukuk for green cities concepts and infrastructure requirements. And we previously helped Senegal government on sukuk issuance. As well, we have Bank Islam Senegal that is part of our network, and they get the provided line of finance to focus on such opportunities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayman. I think we will now watch a video, a 1-minute video. It will start playing now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the CEOs and Dr. Nada Masoud for stimulating such an interesting discussion. Thank you. We shall now start our next session, which is titled Different Modes of Financing for Private Sector Projects. I would like here to invite Ms. Cornelia Mayer, business consultant, macroeconomist, energy expert, and media commentator to lead this coming session.